Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, staring at the massive alien fleet that had appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days ago. The ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. They were sleek, silver vessels that seemed to bend light around them. Some were as large as cities, floating in the darkness of space like metal mountains. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the alien fleet," said Captain Lisa Barnes, his tactical officer. She was a sharp woman in her 30s who had worked her way up through the ranks. Her hands moved quickly across the control panels as she tried to get a clear signal. "Put it through," Morrison replied. He was a tall man, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 40 years in the space Navy, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The main screen flickered to life. The face that appeared was not human. It had pale blue skin, large black eyes, and no visible nose. When it spoke, the words came through a translation device that made its voice sound cold and mechanical. "I am Fleet Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Confederation," the alien said. "We have conquered 47 star systems. Your species will surrender immediately. You have 72 hours to evacuate your military vessels and prepare for relocation." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. "Relocation to where?" "Suitable worlds have been selected for your preservation. You will be moved to colonies where you can live peacefully under our protection. This is not a negotiation. This is an order." "And if we refuse?" Morrison asked, though he already knew the answer. Veltar's expression did not change. "No species has ever refused. You will not be the first. You have seen our fleet. We have 537 warships. Your databases show you have 89 vessels. The mathematics are simple." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Morrison looked around at his crew. They were all young people who had joined the Space Navy to explore the stars, not to fight impossible wars. Now they faced an enemy that outnumbered them. 6-1. "Sir," said Lieutenant Commander Kate Williams from the communication station, "we're getting calls from Earth. President Taylor wants to speak with you immediately." Morrison nodded. "Transfer the call to my ready room. Lisa, you have the bridge. Keep monitoring their fleet movements." In his private office, Morrison activated the secure communication link to Earth. President Dan Taylor appeared on the screen. He was a man in his 50s with worry lines around his eyes that seemed deeper than they had been a week ago. "Jack, tell me you have good news," Taylor said. "I wish I did, Mr. President. The aliens are serious about this ultimatum. Their fleet is bigger than anything we could have imagined. Our best ships would be like rowboats against their battleships." Taylor rubbed his forehead. "The United Nations is meeting in emergency session. Half the delegates want to surrender immediately. They say fighting would be suicide." "Maybe it would be," Morrison admitted. "But I've been looking at their formation. They're confident, maybe too confident. They're not even bothering to maintain proper defensive positions." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking they've never faced an enemy that actually fought back. Every species they've conquered probably surrendered the moment they saw that fleet." On Earth, Dr. Amy Foster was working late in her laboratory deep beneath the Colorado mountains. She was the head of the Terra Defense Research Division, a top-secret program that most people in government did not even know existed. For 10 years, she had been developing weapons and technologies based on one simple assumption: someday humanity would meet hostile aliens. Her assistant, Dr. Mark Thompson, burst into the lab. "Amy, you need to see this. The president is calling an emergency briefing. They want you to present the project files to the Defense Council." Amy looked up from her computer. She was a small woman with short brown hair and intense green eyes. All the projects? Everything. Lazarus, Hellfire, Ghost Protocol. They want to know what we have. Amy felt her stomach tighten. She had hoped they would never need to use any of these weapons. How long do we have? The briefing is in 2 hours. And Amy... The aliens gave us 72 hours to surrender. Meanwhile, on the USS Defiance, Captain Lisa Barnes was analyzing the alien fleet composition when something caught her attention. She called up the tactical display and zoomed in on one of the larger alien ships. "Sir," she called to Morrison as he returned to the bridge, "I think I found something interesting." Morrison walked over to her station. "What is it?" "Look at their energy signatures. These ships are powerful, but they're designed for overwhelming force against weak enemies. Their shields are strong in the front, but they have weak points at the rear where their engines connect to the main hull. Can we exploit that?" "Maybe, but we'd have to get close, and most of our ships wouldn't survive the approach." Morrison studied the display. "What about the new fighters? The ones with the quantum drives? Captain Rodriguez's squadron? Those are still experimental. We don't know if they'll work in real combat." "Experimental is better than nothing," Morrison said. "Get me Rodriguez on the comm." Captain Steve Rodriguez was in the fighter bay of the USS Courage, checking his experimental quantum drive fighter for the 3rd time that day. The ship was smaller than traditional fighters, but it could move faster than anything humanity had ever built. The quantum drive allowed it to make short jumps through space, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. "Rodriguez here," he said, when Morrison's call came through. "Steve, I need to know if your birds are ready for combat." Rodriguez looked at his fighter and then at his squadron of 12 pilots. They were all volunteers who had trained for months on the new technology. "We're as ready as we'll ever be, Admiral. What do you need us to do?" "I need you to be our secret weapon. When the shooting starts, you and your people might be the only ones who can get close enough to hurt them." Back on Earth, President Taylor was addressing the United Nations General Assembly. Representatives from every nation sat in tense silence as he spoke. 72 hours ago, we were alone in the universe. Today, we face a choice that will determine the future of our species. We can surrender and hope these aliens treat us well, or we can fight for our freedom. The delegate from Germany stood up. "Mr. President, with respect, fighting would be madness. They have hundreds of ships. We have less than 90. "Numbers aren't everything," Taylor replied. "Throughout history, small forces have defeated larger ones through courage, tactics, and determination." "This isn't history," the Chinese delegate said. "This is extinction if we choose wrong." Dr. Amy Foster stepped forward. She carried a briefcase containing files that could change everything. "Mr. President, may I address the Assembly?" Taylor nodded. Amy opened her briefcase and activated a holographic display. Images of strange weapons and spacecraft appeared in the air above the assembly floor. "For 10 years, we have been preparing for this day. We have technologies the aliens don't know about. We have weapons they've never seen. We might not win, but we can make them pay a price they never expected." The hall erupted in surprised voices. The Russian delegate stood up. "Why were we not told about these weapons?" "Because we hoped we would never need them," Amy replied. "But now we do." President Taylor raised his hand for silence. "The vote will be held in 6 hours. We will decide as one world, one species. But remember this, once we choose our path, there is no going back." In space, Admiral Morrison watched the alien fleet and made his own preparations. Whatever Earth decided, he and his crews would be ready. The next 72 hours would determine if humanity would live free or die fighting. The countdown had begun. The vote at the United Nations was closer than anyone expected. 51% chose to fight. President Taylor stood before the cameras in the Oval Office, knowing that his next words would echo across the galaxy. To the Zephyrian Confederation, he began, looking directly into the camera, humanity rejects your ultimatum. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not abandon our homes. If you want Earth, you will have to take it from our cold, dead hands. The message was broadcast on all frequencies, sent to every human ship and colony, and transmitted directly to the alien fleet. Within minutes, responses came flooding in from across the solar system. Mining stations, research outposts, and civilian vessels all sent the same message. They would fight. Fleet Commander Veltar received the human response aboard his flagship, the Dominion of Stars. He stared at the transmission with what humans might have mistaken for confusion. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever chosen destruction over submission. "Commander," said his tactical officer, Sub-Commander Kethra, "perhaps they do not understand the situation. Should we demonstrate our power?" Veltar considered this. Every other species had surrendered after seeing his fleet. Perhaps humans needed a more direct lesson. Select one of their outer moons, something uninhabited but visible from their home world. Destroy it completely. Yes, Commander. Which moon? The one they call Europa. Make sure their telescopes can see what happens to those who defy us. On the USS Defiance, the crew watched in horror as 3 Zephyrian battleships broke from the main fleet and headed toward Jupiter. Admiral Morrison knew immediately what they planned to do. "All ships, this is Morrison. Move to defensive positions around Earth. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Captain Lisa Barnes was tracking the alien ships on her sensors. "Sir, they're heading for Europa. If they destroy it..." "The ice chunks will rain down on Jupiter for years," Morrison finished. "They're not just destroying a moon. They're sending a message." "Should we intercept them?" Morrison shook his head. "We can't. Those 3 ships could destroy our entire fleet, but we can make sure everyone sees what we're dealing with. The destruction of Europa was visible from Earth through telescopes and was broadcast live across the planet. The moon simply vanished in a flash of light brighter than the sun. When the light faded, there was nothing left but glowing debris. Captain Steve Rodriguez watched the destruction from his fighter bay and felt something cold settle in his stomach. His quantum drive fighters were fast, but could they really hurt ships that could destroy moons? "Rodriguez," came Admiral Morrison's voice over the comm, "get your squadron ready. If they're willing to destroy a moon to make a point, they won't hesitate to glass Earth's surface." "Understood, sir. We're launching in 10 minutes. Lieutenant Commander Kate Williams was coordinating communications between all human forces when something unexpected happened. Messages started coming in from the outer colonies that everyone thought were lost or abandoned. "Sir," she called to Morrison. "I'm getting signals from the asteroid belt. Strong signals. Military codes." "That's impossible. We don't have any major installations in the belt." "Sir, I'm reading at least 50 contacts. They're using old fleet codes, but they're definitely human." Morrison felt a spark of hope. "Dr. Foster's Project Lazarus. She said she had contingencies. On Ceres Station, hidden deep within the largest asteroid in the belt, Commander Greg Adams was preparing his stealth fleet for combat. Ceres had been secretly converted into a military base over the past 5 years. The asteroid's surface looked dead and lifeless, but inside were shipyards, weapons factories, and a fleet of experimental vessels designed to be invisible to alien sensors. All ships. This is Adams. We've been waiting for this day for 5 years. Our job is simple. Hit them where they don't expect it and make them pay for every inch of space they take. His fleet consisted of 37 vessels, all painted black and equipped with stealth technology that made them nearly invisible. They were smaller than traditional warships, but packed with new weapons that Dr. Foster's team had developed specifically for fighting aliens. Back on Earth, President Taylor was meeting with his military advisors in the White House bunker. General Chris Parker, head of the Joint Chiefs, was explaining the planet's defensive preparations. Every major city now has underground shelters that can hold millions of people. Our missile defense systems are online, and we've converted every military base into a fortress. If they invade, we'll make them fight for every building. What about orbital defense? Taylor asked. Captain Pete Johnson is coordinating the platforms. We have 43 stations armed with nuclear missiles and kinetic weapons. They won't stop the alien fleet, but they'll hurt them. Dr. Amy Foster activated a holographic display showing the solar system. Mr. President, we need to understand that this isn't just about Earth anymore. We have hidden bases on Titan, in the asteroid belt, and in the outer system. Even if Earth falls, the fight will continue. How long can we hold out? That depends on how badly we hurt them in the first attack. If we can damage their fleet significantly, we might have weeks or months. If we can't... She didn't finish the sentence. In space, the Zephyrian fleet was moving into attack formation. Veltar had decided that humans needed to see the futility of resistance. He would destroy their orbital defenses first, then begin bombing their cities until they surrendered. All ships maintain formation, begin with their military satellites, then move to the larger defense platforms. Once their defenses are down, we will demonstrate what happens to worlds that defy us. But as the alien fleet approached Earth, they encountered something they had never seen before. The humans were not running. Instead, every ship, every platform, every fighter was moving to intercept them. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance as his fleet formed up around Earth. He had 89 ships against more than 500, but his crews were ready to fight. All ships, this is Morrison. Today we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. We may not win this battle, but we will make them remember us. For Earth. The response came back from every ship. For Earth, Captain Rodriguez led his squadron of quantum fighters out of the hangar bay. The experimental ships flickered in and out of normal space as their quantum drives activated. They could jump short distances instantly, appearing behind enemy ships before the aliens could react. Ghost Squadron, this is Rodriguez. Remember, we're the only ones fast enough to get close to their big ships. Make every shot count. On the orbital defense platforms, Captain Pete Johnson was coordinating with 43 stations spread around Earth's orbit. Each platform was armed with nuclear missiles and kinetic weapons that could punch through the hull of any ship. All platforms, this is Johnson. We're the last line of defense. If we fall, they start bombing our cities. I don't know about you, but I'd rather die up here than watch them burn our world. The alien fleet was now close enough that human sensors could make out individual ships. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, like metal sculptures that had been designed by someone who had never seen war. Veltar was confident as his fleet approached the human defenses. He had fought dozens of species, and they all followed the same pattern. A few desperate attacks, heavy losses, and then surrender. But as his ships entered weapons range, something unexpected happened. The humans did not fall back. Instead, they charged forward, every ship firing everything they had. Nuclear missiles filled the space between the fleets like angry stars. "Evasive maneuvers," Veltar ordered, but it was too late. The humans had fired everything at once, not trying to conserve ammunition or maintain formation. They were fighting, like cornered animals, and their desperation made them dangerous. The first wave of human missiles struck the Zephyrian shields, and Veltar felt his ship shake under the impact. Other ships in his fleet were reporting damage, something that should have been impossible against such a primitive enemy. "Commander," Kethra reported, "the humans are using nuclear weapons as primary ship killers. Their tactics are unusual." Unusual was an understatement. The humans were not fighting like any civilized species. They were using weapons that could damage their own ships, tactics that guaranteed heavy losses, and showing a willingness to die that Veltar found disturbing. As the battle intensified, Captain Rodriguez's quantum fighters began their attack. Runs. They appeared behind Zephyrian ships, fired their weapons, and vanished before the aliens could respond. It was like fighting ghosts. "Ghost Leader, this is Ghost 3, came a voice over Rodriguez's comm. "I'm making a run on that big cruiser. If I don't make it back, tell my wife I love her." Rodriguez watched as Ghost 3 materialized directly inside the alien ship's engine section and detonated his fighter's reactor. The explosion tore the cruiser apart from the inside. "All ghosts. That's how we do it. If you can't get away, take them with you." The battle for Earth had begun, and already it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans were not just fighting to win. They were fighting to make sure that anyone who conquered them would pay a price so high that other species would think twice before surrendering without a fight. Veltar realized with growing unease that he might have made a terrible. The space around Earth had become a graveyard of burning ships from both fleets. Admiral Morrison watched from the bridge of the USS Defiance as another human destroyer exploded under alien fire. They had been fighting for 6 hours, and the human fleet was being torn apart. "Sir, we've lost the Dallas, the Phoenix, and the New York," Captain Lisa Barnes reported. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could see the strain in her eyes. "That brings our losses to 27 ships." "And the aliens?" 11 confirmed kills, sir. Maybe 15 if we count the ships that are dead in space." Morrison did the math in his head. They were killing alien ships, but not fast enough. At this rate, the human fleet would be destroyed long before they could seriously damage the alien armada. "Sir, incoming transmission from Colonel Davis. He's requesting permission to begin boarding operations." Morrison turned to look at the tactical display. Colonel Mike Davis commanded the Marine assault teams aboard the remaining human ships. Boarding enemy vessels was considered suicide against such advanced technology, but they were running out of options. "Put him through." Davis's face appeared on the screen. He was a big man with scars on his face from the colony wars 20 years ago. "Admiral, my boys are ready to take the fight to them personally. These aliens have never faced human. Marines in close combat. Mike, their ships are 3 times the size of ours. Your men would be outnumbered 100 to 1. "Maybe so, sir. But we've got something they don't expect." Davis held up a modified mining laser. "We've been converting our industrial equipment into weapons. These things can cut through their hull material like it's paper." Morrison looked at the tactical situation. The human fleet was dying slowly but surely. They needed something to change the balance. "You have permission, Colonel. Give them hell." "Yes, sir. Davis out." 20 minutes later, the human assault ship USS Ranger rammed into the side of a Zephyrian battle cruiser. The alien ship's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, not a desperate ship moving at full speed. The Ranger's armored nose punched through the alien hull, and Colonel Davis led his Marines into the breach. The inside of the alien ship was nothing like human vessels. The corridors were wide and curved, lit by soft blue light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Everything was smooth and clean, like the inside of a medical facility. "Move fast, move hard," Davis ordered his men as they spread through the ship. "These aliens have never seen real war. Show them what humans do when they're cornered." The first alien they encountered was a tall, thin creature with pale blue skin and large black eyes. It wore no armor and carried what looked like a tool rather than a weapon. When it saw the humans, it froze in shock. Davis didn't hesitate. His mining laser cut the alien down before it could react. "Keep moving. Find their command center." The Marines moved through the ship like a storm. They had trained for boarding, operations against human ships, but the tactics worked even better against aliens who had never experienced close combat. The Zephyrians were technologically advanced, but they fought from a distance. They had no idea how to handle armed humans inside their own ship. Meanwhile, Commander Julie Thompson was preparing her own desperate gambit. Her destroyer, the USS Vengeance, had taken heavy damage and was venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Her crew was down to 30 people, and her weapons were nearly depleted. "Commander," her weapons officer called out, "we're down to our last 2 nuclear missiles." Thompson looked at the alien dreadnought that was moving to finish them off. It was massive, at least 10 times the size of her ship, with weapons that could vaporize the Vengeance with a single shot. "Load both missiles into the forward tubes. Remove the safety interlocks, ma'am. Without the interlocks, the missiles will detonate on impact. The explosion will destroy us too." "That's the idea, Lieutenant. We're going to ram that dreadnought and take it with us." Thompson activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the commander. We're making a ramming attack on the alien flagship. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the life pods has 30 seconds. Nobody moved. Her crew stayed at their stations, ready to die with their ship. All ahead full. Target the dreadnought's engine section." The USS Vengeance accelerated toward the alien ship, its nuclear missiles armed and ready to detonate. The Zephyrians fired everything they had at the approaching destroyer, but Thompson's ship was too small and too close for their big guns to track effectively. The impact shook both ships. The Vengeance's armored prow punched deep into the dreadnought's hull before the nuclear missiles exploded. The blast tore both ships apart, but the alien vessel was so large that the explosion propagated through its entire structure, turning it into an expanding cloud of radioactive debris. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Veltar watched the destruction with something approaching horror. The humans had just sacrificed an entire ship and crew to destroy one of his dreadnoughts. No civilized species would consider such tactics. "Commander," Kethra reported, "we're receiving distress signals from the Eternal Harmony. They report that humans have boarded their ship and are—" "Commander, they're asking for immediate assistance." "What do you mean, boarded? How did primitive humans get aboard one of our cruisers?" "They rammed their assault ship into the hull, sir." "The human soldiers are inside the ship using crude weapons to fight the crew." Veltar had never heard of anything like this. Species that fought the Confederation used proper tactics, long-range engagements, energy shields, civilized warfare. They didn't ram ships into each other or board enemy vessels with handheld weapons. "Send a security team to assist the Eternal. harmony. But as more reports came in, Veltar realized the scope of the problem. The humans weren't fighting like any enemy he had ever faced. They were using suicide tactics, ramming attacks, and close-quarters combat that his forces were completely unprepared for. On Earth, Captain Pete Johnson was coordinating the orbital defense platforms as alien ships broke through the human fleet and approached the planet. His platforms were armed with nuclear missiles and kinetic weapons, but they were stationary targets that couldn't maneuver. Platform 7, you have 3 alien fighters coming in on your port side, Johnson warned. Roger that, Control. We see them. Johnson watched as Platform 7 fired its point defense weapons at the approaching aliens. The platform managed to destroy 2 of the fighters, but the third one got through and fired a plasma torpedo that vaporized the entire station and its crew of 50 people. Platform 7 is gone, Johnson reported to Admiral Morrison. That's our 15th platform. Down! How many do we have left? 28 platforms, sir. But the aliens are learning our tactics. They're staying out of range of our missiles and picking us off one by one. Johnson made a decision that would have been unthinkable in any previous war. All platforms, this is Johnson. Abandon your stations and set them for collision course with the nearest alien ship. Evacuate to the emergency pods. Sir, that will leave Earth defenseless. Earth is already defenseless, Johnson replied. But we can take some of them with us. One by one, the orbital platforms fired their maneuvering thrusters and began moving toward alien ships. The stations were massive structures, each one the size of a city block. When they impacted enemy vessels at orbital velocity, the results were devastating. The aliens had shields that could stop energy weapons and deflect missiles, but they had no defense against a space station moving at 17,000 miles per hour. 5 more alien ships were destroyed in the collisions, but Earth's orbital defenses were now completely gone. Back aboard the alien cruiser Eternal Harmony, Colonel Davis and his Marines had reached the ship's command center. The alien officers inside were completely unprepared for human boarding tactics. "Surrender your ship," Davis ordered, pointing his weapon at what he assumed was the captain. The alien creature made sounds that the translation device couldn't interpret. It seemed to be in shock that enemies were actually standing in its command center. "I don't think it understands the concept," said Sergeant Linda Foster, Davis's second in command. "These aliens probably never board each other's ships." Davis looked around the command center. The alien technology was far advanced beyond anything humans had, but the aliens themselves seemed helpless when confronted with direct violence. "Can we turn this ship's weapons on the rest of their fleet?" "Working on it, sir," said Corporal Tim Rodriguez, who was trying to understand the alien control systems. "These interfaces are nothing like our computers, but I think I'm getting the hang of it." "Sir," Sergeant Foster called out, "we've got alien security forces moving toward our position, about 50 of them." Davis checked his weapon. "How much ammunition do we have left?" "Not enough for 50 aliens, sir." Davis looked around the command center and saw something that made him smile. The alien ship's self-destruct system was clearly marked with warning symbols that needed no translation. "Foster, Rodriguez, get to the escape pods. I'm going to give these aliens a lesson about the cost of invading Earth." "Sir, we're not leaving you behind." "That's an order, Sergeant. Tell Admiral Morrison that the Eternal Harmony is about to have a very bad day." As his Marines reluctantly headed for the escape pods Davis activated, Dr. Amy Foster was working frantically in her underground laboratory as reports from the space battle filtered down to Earth. The human fleet was being destroyed, but they were inflicting far more damage than anyone had thought possible. Now, it was time to reveal humanity's other secrets. "Mark, activate the Ghost Protocol," she told her assistant. It's time to show these aliens what real human warfare looks like. Dr. Mark Thompson's hands moved across the control panel, sending activation signals to hidden installations throughout the solar system. Ghost Protocol is live, Amy. All stealth assets are now operational. Ghost Protocol was the most secret part of humanity's defense plan. For 15 years, human engineers had been building hidden bases, weapons platforms, and automated systems throughout the solar system. They were designed to be invisible to alien sensors and activate only when Earth itself was under attack. In space, Colonel Ryan Mitchell received the activation signal aboard his modified transport ship. He commanded a special forces unit that had been training for this day since the first alien radio signals were detected. His men were equipped with experimental technology that Amy Foster's team had developed in complete secrecy. "Gentlemen, it's showtime," Mitchell announced to his team of 30 Special Forces soldiers. "We're going to board alien ships, but we're not going in through the hull. We're going in through their cargo bays using one-way teleporter technology." The teleporters were based on quantum entanglement theory that human scientists had been working on for decades. They could transport a person instantly across space, but the process was so dangerous that it was essentially a suicide mission. The soldiers using them had a 50% chance of arriving alive and intact. "Remember," Mitchell continued, "once we're inside their ships, our job is to turn them against each other. We plant computer viruses in their navigation systems, we damage their communication arrays, and we make them think their own ships are attacking them." Lieutenant Sarah Collins checked her equipment one final time. She was a computer specialist who had volunteered for the teleporter program knowing she probably wouldn't survive. "Sir, the virus packages are ready. If we can get into their main computer systems, we can make their ships see enemies everywhere." "Good. Remember, we're not trying to win this battle. We're trying to make them afraid of fighting us. Every alien ship that destroys one of its own allies is a victory." The first teleporter activation sent Sergeant Bob Taylor directly into the engine room of a Zephyrian destroyer. He materialized in a flash of blue light, his body intact, but his nervous system damaged by the quantum transfer. He had maybe 10 minutes before the cellular damage killed him. Taylor moved quickly through the alien ship, placing small devices on critical systems. The devices were computer viruses designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in alien artificial intelligence systems. They would make the ship's computers malfunction in very specific ways. 5 minutes later, the destroyer's navigation system began identifying other Zephyrian ships as hostile targets. Its weapon systems automatically engaged what it thought were human vessels, but were actually other ships in the alien fleet. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Veltar watched in confusion as his ships began firing on each other. "Kethra, what is happening? Why are our vessels attacking each other?" "Commander, we're detecting massive computer malfunctions throughout the fleet. Our ship's artificial intelligence systems are misidentifying targets." "How is that possible? Our computer systems are immune to electronic warfare." "Unknown, sir. But we're losing ships to friendly fire faster than we are to human weapons." "What Veltar didn't understand was that human computer viruses worked differently than anything the Confederation had encountered. Other species used energy-based electronic warfare that tried to overload systems with power. Humans used logic viruses that exploited the way artificial intelligence made decisions. Meanwhile, Captain Pete Johnson was leading the survivors of Earth's orbital defense network in one final desperate attack. His command ship was a converted cruise liner that had been hastily armed with torpedo launchers and missile pods. All civilian vessels. "This is Johnson. I know you didn't sign up for this, but we need every ship we can get. We're going to ram their formation and break their defensive line." The response came from dozens of ships. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels, and even luxury yachts. Every human ship in Earth orbit was joining the attack, regardless of whether they were armed or not. Johnson's converted cruise liner, the former Star Princess, led the charge. The ship had been designed to carry 3,000 passengers on pleasure cruises, but now it carried 500 volunteers armed with whatever weapons they could find. "This is Captain Johnson to all ships. We're going to punch a hole in there. Line big enough for our remaining fighters to get through. Follow me in." The Star Princess accelerated toward the alien formation, its improvised armor plating glowing red-hot from enemy fire. The ship was never designed for combat, but desperation had turned it into a weapon. The liner rammed directly into a Zephyrian battlecruiser, its reinforced hull punching through alien shields that were designed to stop energy weapons, but not. Kinetic impacts. The explosion destroyed both ships, but it created a gap in the alien formation. Commander Nina Hall was coordinating Earth's ground-based defenses from a bunker complex beneath the Rocky Mountains. She watched through satellite feeds as the battle in space raged overhead, but her job was to prepare for what came next. All defense sectors, this is Hall. Begin implementing Fortress Protocol. Every city, every town, every building is now a military target. We're going to make them pay for every inch of ground. Fortress Protocol was humanity's plan for ground warfare against alien invaders. Every major city had been secretly converted into a fortress over the past 5 years. Underground bunkers connected by tunnels, hidden weapon caches, and automated. Defense systems turned urban areas into death traps for any invading force. "Sir," her communications officer reported, "we're getting signals from resistance cells in major cities worldwide. London, Tokyo, Moscow, New York. They're all reporting. Ready status." "What about the civilian population?" "Most have been evacuated to the deep shelters. The ones who stayed are volunteers." Hall nodded grimly. The volunteers were people who had chosen to stay behind and fight rather than hide in underground bunkers. They were teachers, doctors, engineers, and ordinary citizens who had decided that freedom was worth dying for. In space, the battle was entering its final phase. Admiral Morrison's fleet was down to 15 ships, but they had destroyed nearly 50 alien vessels. The mathematics of the battle had changed dramatically from the aliens' original projections. "Sir," Captain Lisa Barnes reported, "the alien fleet is pulling back. They're moving to long-range bombardment positions." Morrison understood what this meant. The aliens were going to bombard Earth from orbit, destroying cities and military installations until humanity surrendered. It was a tactic they had probably used on dozens of other worlds. "All remaining ships, this is Morrison. We're going to make one final attack run, target their command ship. If we can take out their leader, maybe we can buy Earth some time." The USS Defiance led the charge, its hull scarred by enemy fire and its crew reduced to half strength. Behind, it came the 14 remaining ships of the human fleet, all of them damaged, all of them determined to make their sacrifice count. But as they approached the alien command ship, something unexpected happened. Captain Steve Rodriguez's quantum fighters, which had been presumed destroyed hours earlier, suddenly appeared throughout the alien formation. "Ghost Squadron to Admiral Morrison," Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "We've been playing, dead for the past 2 hours, recharging our quantum drives. We're ready for one final attack." Rodriguez had only 8 fighters left out of his original 12, but they were armed with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. The quantum torpedoes his fighters carried were designed to bypass energy shields by existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "All ghosts, This is Rodriguez. We're going to hit their command ship with everything we have. Target the bridge section. For humanity. The quantum fighters flickered in and out of normal space as they approached the alien flagship. Their unusual movement patterns made them almost impossible to target, and their weapons were unlike anything the Zephyrians had encountered. The quantum torpedoes passed right through the alien shields as if they didn't exist, striking the command ship's hull and detonating inside the vessel itself. The explosions tore through multiple decks, causing massive damage to the ship's command and control systems. Veltar felt his flagship shaking around him as human weapons tore through the hull. "Damage report! Commander, we've lost main navigation, communications, and fire control. The human weapons are somehow bypassing our shields." For the first time in the battle, Veltar felt something approaching fear. These humans had technology that the Confederation had never encountered, tactics that no civilized species would use, and a determination that bordered on madness. "Sir," Kethra reported, "we're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet." Veltar stared at his tactical officer in disbelief. "Surrender demands? From them?" Fleet Commander Veltar stared at the tactical display showing his damaged fleet. In 12 hours of fighting, he had lost 63 ships to what should have been a primitive enemy. The humans had fought with a savagery and determination that defied everything he understood about warfare. "Commander," Sub-Commander Kethra reported, "we're receiving urgent communications from High Command. Admiral Zarthek is demanding a full report on the situation." Veltar felt his throat tighten. Admiral Zarthek commanded the Confederation's Second Fleet and was known for his ruthless efficiency. If he was getting involved, it meant the High Command was concerned about the unexpectedly fierce human resistance. "Put him through." The holographic image of Admiral Zarthek appeared above the command table. He was an older Zephyrian with cold, calculating eyes and scars that marked him as a veteran of dozens of campaigns. "Veltar explained to me how a primitive species has managed to destroy 63 of your ships. Sir, the humans fight unlike any enemy we have previously encountered. They use suicide tactics, ramming attacks, and weapons that bypass our defensive systems. Are you telling me that you cannot defeat primitives who still use chemical rockets?" Veltar chose his words carefully. "Sir, I request immediate reinforcements. The humans have proven more resourceful than our intelligence suggested." Zarthek's expression darkened. "You have over 400 ships remaining. That should be more than sufficient to crush any resistance. I am authorizing the use of planet-killer weapons. Glass their world and end this embarrassment." The transmission ended, leaving Veltar alone with his orders. Planet-killer weapons were used only when a species proved completely incapable of civilized surrender. They would turn Earth's surface into molten glass, destroying all life on the planet. But as Veltar prepared to give the order, he received an unexpected communication from Admiral Morrison. "Attention Zephyrian Fleet," Morrison's voice echoed, "through space. You have seen what humanity is capable of when we fight for our home. Now you will see what we can do when we fight for our future." On Morrison's signal, hidden installations throughout the solar system suddenly came online. Dr. Amy Foster's Project Lazarus had been 15 years in the making, and now its full scope was revealed. Commander Greg Adams emerged from the asteroid belt with a fleet that shouldn't have existed. 37 stealth ships materialized around Ceres, each one armed with experimental weapons and crewed by volunteers who had been secretly training for this moment. "Asteroid Command to Admiral Morrison," Adams reported. "Project Lazarus is fully operational. We have ships, weapons, and manufacturing facilities that the aliens don't know about. But Adams wasn't the only surprise. Throughout the outer solar system, other hidden installations were revealing themselves. On Titan, General Chris Parker commanded a massive military base that had been disguised as a research station for over a decade. Titan Base to Earth Command. Parker's voice crackled over the communications network. We have 45 armed vessels and enough supplies to fight for years. The aliens walked into a trap. Captain Holly White was aboard one of Parker's ships, a converted mining vessel that had been secretly armed with the most advanced weapons humanity could build. She was a former merchant marine officer who had volunteered for the Deep Space Defense Program. Admiral Morrison, this is Captain White aboard the Titan Guardian. We're equipped with long-range quantum torpedoes and stealth technology. Give us targets and we'll make them disappear. Veltar watched in growing alarm as human ships appeared throughout the solar system. His intelligence reports had suggested that humanity had fewer than 100 vessels. But now he was detecting over 200 human contacts. Kethra, how did our scouts miss this many ships? Unknown, Commander. Either our intelligence was completely wrong, or the humans have been hiding these assets for years. The truth was even worse than Kethra imagined. Dr. Amy Foster's team had been preparing for alien contact since the first radio signals from space were detected. They had built hidden bases, secret shipyards, and weapons factories throughout the solar system. Sir, the tactical officer reported, we're detecting weapons signatures unlike anything in our databases. The humans appear to have technology that our sensors cannot properly identify. Commander Ben Clark was aboard one of the most secret human vessels, a deep space reconnaissance ship that had been operating in the outer system for 5 years. His mission had been to watch for alien approach routes and gather intelligence. But now he was preparing for combat. Control, this is Night Watch. I'm detecting Zephyrian supply ships moving through the outer system. Requesting permission to engage. Permission granted, Night Watch. Show them that space belongs to humanity. Clark's ship was armed with experimental stealth missiles that could travel for days without detection. His targets were the alien supply vessels that kept the Zephyrian fleet operational. Without fuel, ammunition, and spare parts, even the most advanced fleet would become helpless. The first supply convoy never saw the attack coming. Clark's missiles struck 3 alien transport ships simultaneously, vaporizing them and their escorts in brilliant explosions that could be seen from Mars. Supply convoy destroyed, Clark reported. Moving to secondary targets. Veltar received the news of the supply convoy's destruction with growing dread. The humans weren't just fighting a defensive battle for their homeworld. They were conducting coordinated attacks throughout the solar system using assets that shouldn't have existed. Sir, Kethra reported, we're receiving distress calls from our outer patrols. Human ships are attacking our scouts, our supply lines, and our communication relays. They appear to have forces positioned throughout their star system. How is that possible? Our intelligence showed they had minimal deep space capabilities. It appears our intelligence was deliberately deceived, sir. The humans have been preparing for this war for years. But the worst news was yet to come. Commander Nina Hall, coordinating Earth's defenses from her underground bunker, activated the final phase of humanity's defensive plan. All deep space. Assets, this is command. Implement Operation Hellfire. Target all alien installations in the outer system. Operation Hellfire was the offensive component of humanity's defense strategy. While the aliens had been focused on the battle around Earth, human forces had been quietly moving into position to strike at Zephyrian staging areas, supply depots, and command posts throughout the solar system. Captain Tony Lewis led a squadron, of armed merchant vessels in an attack on the alien forward base on Europa's remains. The Zephyrians had established a command post in the debris field left by the moon's destruction, thinking it would be safe from human attack. All ships. This is Lewis. These aliens destroyed our moon to make a point. Now we're going to make a point of our own. Lewis's converted freighters were armed with mining charges that had been modified into ship-killer weapons. They rammed through the alien defensive perimeter and detonated their cargo holds among the alien installations, turning the Europa debris field into an expanding cloud of wreckage and radiation. Commander Maria Santos was simultaneously leading an attack on the alien communication array that the Zephyrians had deployed near Jupiter. Her ship was a former research vessel that had been secretly armed with quantum disruptor weapons. "Target the main communication hub," Santos ordered her weapons officer. "If we can cut their communications, their fleet coordination will collapse." The quantum disruptors tore through the alien communications array like paper, severing the Zephyrian fleet's ability to coordinate with their command structure. Within minutes, individual alien ships were operating independently, unable to receive orders or coordinate attacks. Veltar felt his command falling apart around him. "Kethra, restore communications with the fleet immediately." "Impossible, sir. The humans have destroyed our primary communication array and are jamming our backup systems." "What about contact with High Command?" "We've lost all contact with Admiral Zarthek's fleet, sir. We're operating independently now." This was exactly what Dr. Amy Foster had planned. Cut off from their command structure and facing attacks from multiple directions, the alien fleet would be forced to fight as individual units rather than as a coordinated force. But the humans weren't finished. Throughout the solar system, sleeper agents who had been placed on asteroids and space stations years earlier were now activating. These were miners, researchers, and engineers who had volunteered to serve as humanity's last line of defense. On Ganymede, engineer Paul Martinez activated a weapons platform that had been disguised as a water processing facility. The platform was armed with kinetic weapons that could accelerate metal projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. "Ganymede Station to any human forces," Martinez broadcast. "I have clear shots at alien vessels in the Jupiter system. Sending coordinates now." The kinetic weapons struck 3 Zephyrian ships before they even realized they were under attack. The metal projectiles punched through alien armor like bullets through paper, leaving the ships dead in space. Similar attacks were being launched from hidden installations throughout the solar system. The aliens had expected to fight a single, decisive battle around Earth. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated. News of humanity's fierce resistance spread across the galaxy faster than anyone could have imagined. On distant worlds that had surrendered to the Zephyrian Confederation decades ago, subjugated species were receiving fragmentary reports of an impossible battle. A primitive world called Earth was fighting back, and they were winning. Ambassador Rachel Torres was working from a hidden diplomatic station in the asteroid belt, using captured Zephyrian communication equipment to broadcast humanity's message to oppressed worlds throughout the galaxy. She was a career diplomat who had volunteered for what everyone assumed was a suicide mission. "This is Ambassador Torres of the Human Republic," she transmitted on all frequencies. "To all free peoples of the galaxy, Earth stands. Humanity fights. The Zephyrian Confederation can be defeated." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Encrypted messages began flooding in from worlds that had been silent for decades. The Altarian Republic, conquered 50 years ago, sent coordinates for secret resistance cells. The Kelvin Mining Collective transmitted intelligence about Zephyrian supply routes. Species that had been forced into slavery were suddenly finding their voices again. On Altair Prime, former General Kexdan received the human transmissions in his underground hideout. He had led the Altarian resistance for 30 years, watching his people slowly give up hope as the Confederation's grip tightened. Now, for the first time in decades, he had reason for optimism. "Send word to all our cells," he ordered his communications officer. "The humans have shown us that the Zephyrians can bleed. If they can fight, so can we." Within hours, Altarian resistance fighters were attacking Confederation installations across their home system. Weapons caches that had been hidden for decades were suddenly being put to use. Mining explosives became improvised bombs. Industrial equipment became weapons of war. General Chris Parker was coordinating with these resistance movements from his command center on Titan. His base had been revealed during the battle, but it was too well defended for the aliens to attack directly. Now it served as a hub for coordinating rebellion across multiple star systems. "Ambassador Torres, this is General Parker," he transmitted. "We're receiving confirmation of uprisings on 17 different worlds. The Confederation is fighting fires throughout their empire." "Copy that, General. What's our supply situation for supporting these resistance movements?" Parker looked at his logistics reports. "We can provide intelligence, communication support, and limited weapons shipments. But these people are going to have to do most of the fighting themselves." On Earth, President Taylor was meeting with his war cabinet in the deep bunker beneath the White House. The surface of the planet was still under threat from the alien fleet, but the strategic situation had changed dramatically. "Mr. President," reported General Sandra Martinez, "our hidden assets throughout the solar system have inflicted severe damage on the Zephyrian fleet. They've lost over 100 ships and most of their supply infrastructure." "What about casualties on our side?" "Heavy, sir. We've lost 60% of our space-based forces and most of our orbital installations. But we're still fighting. And the aliens are running out of resources." Dr. Amy Foster activated a holographic display showing the entire galaxy. Red dots marked Confederation worlds, while green dots showed active resistance movements. "Mr. President, we've achieved something unprecedented. For the first time in Confederation history, multiple species are rebelling simultaneously. They're calling it the Great Uprising. How long can we sustain this level of resistance?" "That depends on how quickly we can establish supply lines to the resistance movements. We have the technology, but we need time to build the infrastructure." Lieutenant, Commander Sam Brooks was already working on that problem. He commanded a squadron of fast courier ships that were carrying supplies and intelligence to resistance cells throughout the galaxy. His vessels were equipped with the most advanced stealth technology humanity could produce. "Control, this is Brooks," he reported from the bridge of his ship, the USS Shadowrunner. "We've successfully delivered weapons and communication equipment to the Kelvan system. Local resistance forces are reporting significant success against Confederation patrols." "Copy that, Brooks. What's your next destination?" "The Vegan system, sir. They've requested technical assistance for their sabotage operations." Brooks's missions were incredibly dangerous. He had to navigate through Confederation space while avoiding patrol ships, orbital defense platforms, and planetary security forces. One mistake would mean capture or death, but the intelligence and supplies he carried could spark rebellions that would tie down entire Confederation fleets. On the Kelvin mining world of Kepler Station, Chief Engineer Lisa Park received Brooks's delivery with grim satisfaction. She had been forced to work in the Confederation's dilithium mines for 15 years, watching her people slowly work themselves to death for alien masters. "How many of these communication devices do we have?" she asked her fellow resistance leader, Dr. Tom Wilson. 50 units, plus enough explosives to take out the main processing facility." The humans also sent technical specifications for converting our mining equipment into weapons. Park looked at the human-supplied equipment with admiration. These people understand industrial sabotage. They've given us everything we need to shut down dilithium production for months. The question is, are we ready to face the consequences? The Confederation will retaliate against the civilian population. They're already working us to death, Park replied. At least this way, we die fighting for something. That night, simultaneous explosions rocked Confederation facilities across 17 star systems. Mining operations that had fed the alien war machine for decades suddenly went silent. Supply convoys that had operated without incident for years began disappearing. Communication relays that connected Confederation space started failing mysteriously. Fleet. Commander Veltar received reports of the spreading rebellion with growing desperation. His fleet was still trapped in the Sol system, taking constant attacks from hidden human installations, while his supply lines throughout the galaxy were being systematically destroyed. "Sir," Sub-Commander Kethra reported, "High Command is demanding immediate updates on the situation. Admiral Zarthek's reinforcement fleet is still 3 days away, but they're encountering resistance at every jump point." "What kind of resistance?" "Sabotaged navigation beacons, mined jump routes, and coordinated attacks by species that were supposed to be pacified decades ago. The humans somehow convinced them all to rebel simultaneously." Veltar studied the tactical reports and realized the full scope of the disaster. The human resistance had triggered a galaxy-wide uprising that threatened the very foundation of the Confederation. Worlds that had been peaceful for generations were suddenly in open revolt. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human. Admiral Morrison." Veltar activated the communication system, wondering what new surprise the humans had prepared. Morrison's image appeared on the screen, broadcast from the bridge of his damaged but still functional flagship. "Commander Veltar, this is Admiral Morrison. I'm offering you one final chance to withdraw your forces from this system. You are in no position to make demands, human. Your fleet is nearly destroyed." "My fleet was never the real threat," Morrison replied with a cold smile. "Look around. The galaxy, Commander. How many of your worlds are still under your control?" Veltar checked his strategic display and felt his confidence crumble. Red warning indicators were flashing across dozens of star systems. Rebellion markers showed active resistance on 43 different worlds. Supply routes that had operated for centuries were now marked as compromised or destroyed. "This is your doing," Veltar accused. "Partly. But mostly, this is what happens when oppressed people see that their oppressors can be defeated. We showed them that the Confederation isn't invincible. They're doing the rest themselves." Captain Holly White was demonstrating exactly what Morrison meant. Her ship, the Titan Guardian, had penetrated deep into Confederation space and was conducting hit-and-run attacks on military installations. Her mission was to prove that human ships could operate anywhere in the galaxy. "Control, this is White," she reported. "We've successfully destroyed the Confederation supply depot at Rigel 7. Local resistance forces are moving to occupy the facility." "Copy that, White. Be advised, Confederation reinforcements are moving toward your position." "Understood. We'll be gone before they arrive." White's ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a burning supply depot and proof that nowhere in Confederation space was safe from human attack. Similar raids were being conducted by other human vessels throughout the galaxy, each one demonstrating that the age of unchallenged Confederation dominance was over. On Vega Prime, the largest Confederation naval base outside their home system, Admiral Koltar was dealing with his own crisis. The human raids had destroyed half his supply infrastructure, while local resistance fighters were sabotaging his remaining facilities. "Sir," his aide reported, "the prisoners from the recent resistance raids are requesting to speak with you." "I don't negotiate with terrorists." "Sir, they're not asking for negotiation. They're demanding unconditional surrender." The phrase, "all hell broke loose," became literal as the galaxy exploded into the largest war in recorded history. What had begun as a simple conquest of Earth had become a massive rebellion that stretched across thousands of star systems. The Zephyrian Confederation, which had ruled unopposed for 3 centuries, suddenly found itself fighting for its very survival. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, looking at a tactical display that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked active battlefronts, and there were hundreds of them. The human resistance had ignited something that the aliens had never imagined possible: simultaneous uprisings across their entire empire. "Sir," Captain Lisa Barnes reported, "we're receiving confirmation from Operation Hellfire Command. The assault fleet is ready to launch." Operation Hellfire was humanity's most audacious plan yet. While the Zephyrian fleet was trapped in the Sol system, human forces were preparing to attack Zeph Prime itself, the capital world of the Confederation. It was a journey of over 3,000 light years through heavily defended space. But Dr. Amy Foster's people had been planning this mission for years. Captain Tony Lewis commanded the assault fleet from the bridge of the USS Retribution, a massive ship that had been built in secret in the asteroid belt. His fleet consisted of 50 vessels, each one armed with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created. "All ships," this is Lewis, "we're about to undertake the longest military operation in human history. Our target is the enemy capital. Our mission is to prove that nowhere in the galaxy is safe from human retaliation." The ships of Operation Hellfire activated their quantum drives simultaneously, disappearing from the Sol system in flashes of blue light. They would travel through hyperspace for weeks, striking at Confederation installations along the way before reaching their ultimate target. But Lewis's fleet was only one part of humanity's offensive. Throughout the galaxy, other human ships were conducting their own missions, each one designed to stretch Confederation forces beyond their breaking point. Commander Maria Santos was leading a different kind of mission in the Rigel sector. Her ship, the USS Vengeance 2, was equipped with experimental technology that could broadcast human communications across entire star systems simultaneously. "All oppressed peoples of the Rigel sector," Santos transmitted on every frequency. "This is Commander Santos of the Human Republic. We are here to support your fight for freedom. Confederation forces in this sector number approximately 50,000. You outnumber them 1,000 to 1. The choice is yours." The response was immediate and overwhelming. On 7 different worlds in the Rigel sector, local populations rose up against their Confederation overseers. Mining facilities that had operated for decades suddenly went silent as workers turned their industrial equipment into weapons. Government buildings that had housed alien administrators were stormed by crowds of angry citizens. On Rigel Prime, former Governor Kextar watched from his palace as crowds surrounded the building. He had ruled this world for 20 years, confident that the local population was too beaten down to ever resist. "Sir," his aide reported, "the local security forces have joined the rebellion. We have no one left to defend us." "How is this possible? These people have been pacified for generations." "Sir, they're receiving support from the humans, technical assistance, weapons, and most importantly, hope." Kextar looked out his window at the angry crowds below. They were carrying signs with words in the human language that his translator rendered as freedom or death. It was a concept that the Confederation had never fully understood. Meanwhile, in the Vegan system, Lieutenant Commander Sam Brooks was coordinating with local resistance forces in their assault on the main Confederation naval base. His ship had delivered enough explosives to level a small city, and the rebels knew exactly how to use them. Brooks to Resistance Command. He transmitted to the underground bunkers where human weapons were being distributed to alien rebels. Naval base security is down to 40%. Now would be a good time for your assault. The attack came from every direction simultaneously. Vegan rebels who had been farmers and shopkeepers just days before were now armed with human weapons and fighting with a determination that terrified their former oppressors. The naval base, which had controlled the system for 50 years, fell in less than 6 hours. But the most dramatic rebellion was taking place in the Altarian system, where General Kexdan was leading his people in their final push for freedom. The Altarians had been enslaved for over 50 years, forced to work in the mines that produced the rare metals needed for Confederation technology. All Altarian forces, this is General Kexdan, he broadcast from his command bunker. Today, we break the chains that have bound us for 5 decades. Today, we reclaim our world. The Altarian uprising was particularly brutal because the rebels had been planning it for 30 years. They knew every Confederation installation, every security protocol, and every weakness in the alien defenses. When they struck, it was with surgical precision that destroyed the occupation force before it could react. Dr. Lisa Park, the engineer who had been enslaved in the Kelvin mines, was leading her own rebellion with weapons and explosives provided by Lieutenant Commander Brooks. Her target was the central processing facility that refined the rare minerals essential to Confederation technology. Everyone knows their assignments, she told her team of former slaves. We blow the processing center, the storage facilities, and the transportation hub. Without this facility, the Confederation loses 20% of their strategic material production. The explosions that followed could be seen from orbit. 50 years of alien infrastructure was destroyed in a single coordinated attack, and the former slaves who had built it were now free. Fleet Commander Veltar was receiving reports of these uprisings from his flagship in the Sol system, but he was powerless to respond. His fleet was still taking constant attacks from hidden human installations, and his supply lines had been completely severed. Sir, Sub-Commander Kethra reported, we're receiving a priority transmission from High Command. Admiral Zarthex, reinforcement fleet has been delayed indefinitely. Delayed by what? Resistance activity along their route, sir. They're fighting their way through 7 different star systems where local populations have risen in rebellion. Their progress has been reduced to less than 1 light year per day. Veltar realized the magnitude of the disaster. The human resistance had not only triggered galaxy-wide rebellion, but had also made it impossible for Confederation forces to coordinate their response. Every fleet was fighting independently, cut off from reinforcements and supplies. Sir, we're also receiving reports from the home system. Veltar felt his blood freeze. What kind of reports? Human ships have been detected in the outer system near Zeph Prime. They appear to be conducting reconnaissance for a possible attack on our capital world. This was exactly what Captain Tony Lewis and his Operation Hellfire fleet were doing. They had spent 3 weeks fighting their way through Confederation space, destroying supply depots and communication relays, before finally reaching the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. Hellfire command to all ships, Lewis transmitted. We are now in the Zeph system. The enemy capital is 12 light hours away. All ships prepare for the final assault. Lewis looked at his tactical display showing the defenses around Zeph Prime. Hundreds of orbital platforms, thousands of defensive satellites, and 3 full fleets of warships protected the Confederation capital. It was the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting over 2,000 enemy contacts in the system. The odds are approximately 40-1 against us." "Those are better odds than we had at Earth," Lewis replied. "Remember, we're not here to win a battle. We're here to send a message. All ships, begin the attack." The human fleet charged directly toward Zeph Prime, their weapons firing continuously as they punched through the outer defensive perimeter. They were vastly outnumbered, but they had advantages that the Confederation had never encountered. Human ships were designed to fight at close range, using tactics that bypassed alien defensive systems. They used ramming attacks, nuclear mines, and suicide runs that no civilized species would consider. Most importantly, they were crewed by people who had volunteered to die rather than see their species enslaved. The USS Retribution led the charge, its armored hull glowing red-hot as it absorbed enemy fire. Lewis's ship was taking massive damage, but it was also inflicting casualties on a scale that shocked the alien defenders. "Sir," the weapons officer reported, "we've breached their orbital defense grid. We have a clear shot at the capital city." Lewis looked at the beautiful alien city. Below, a gleaming metropolis that had never been touched by war. "All ships. Target government buildings only. We're not here to slaughter civilians." The human bombardment lasted only minutes, but it achieved its purpose. For the first time in Confederation history, their capital world had been attacked by an enemy fleet. The government buildings that had ruled hundreds of worlds for centuries were reduced to smoking rubble. Lewis's fleet was destroyed in the battle, but the message had been sent. Captain Alex Murphy, a young officer who had graduated from the academy just weeks before the invasion, now commanded one of the Alliance's rapid response fleets. His mission was to provide military support to worlds that were struggling to maintain their freedom. "All ships, this is Murphy," he transmitted to his mixed fleet of human and alien vessels. "We have reports of Confederation loyalists attacking the civilian population on Kepler 7. Our job is to protect the innocent and preserve the peace." Commander Sarah Hill was leading similar missions throughout the galaxy, but her focus was on establishing diplomatic relations between former enemies. Many species that had fought each other under Confederation rule were now learning to cooperate as free peoples. "The hardest part," Hill reported to Alliance headquarters, "is convincing people that they don't have to hate each other just because they're different. The Confederation used fear and hatred to control people. We're trying to build something based on respect and cooperation." 5 years after the Battle of Earth, Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new Alliance headquarters, a massive space station built at the edge of the Sol system. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from dozens of different worlds docked at the station's ports. Captain Lisa Barnes, now promoted to Admiral herself, joined him at the window. "Hard to believe it's been 5 years," she said. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Morrison replied. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago." "Any regrets?" Morrison thought about the question seriously. "I regret the cost. Billions of people died because we chose to fight instead of surrender. Sometimes I wonder if we had the right to make that choice for everyone." "Do you really believe that?" Morrison: "The final battle for Earth lasted 18 hours and changed the galaxy forever. Admiral Morrison's reinforced fleet, now numbering over 100 ships, faced the remaining Zephyrian forces in the space around humanity's home world. But this was no longer the desperate defense it had been weeks earlier. This was humanity driving an invader from their territory. Fleet Commander Veltar watched his tactical display with growing despair. His fleet had been reduced to fewer than 200 ships, cut off from all reinforcements, and facing an enemy that had proven impossible to predict or defeat. Reports from across the galaxy told the same story. The Confederation was collapsing under the weight of simultaneous rebellions. "Sir," Subcommander Kethra reported, "we're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet." "Surrender demands?" Veltar repeated the words as if they made no sense. "Yes, sir. Admiral Morrison is offering to accept our unconditional surrender and allow our forces to withdraw from the system." For a moment, Veltar considered the offer. 3 months ago, he had commanded the largest invasion fleet in Confederation history. Now he was being offered mercy by the very species he had come to conquer. But before he could respond, new contacts appeared on his sensors. Human ships were emerging from hyperspace all around his fleet, not to attack, but to demonstrate their strength. These were vessels from the successful rebellion movements across the galaxy, species that had learned to fight like humans and were now coming to Earth to show their support. Admiral Morrison opened a communication channel to the entire Zephyrian fleet. "Commander Veltar, this is Admiral Morrison. As you can see, you are now surrounded by the combined fleets of 17 different species. All of them were inspired by humanity's example to throw off Confederation rule. The alien ships that surrounded Veltar's fleet were a strange mix of converted civilian vessels, captured Confederation ships, and newly built warships designed with human tactical principles. They represented dozens of worlds that had been freed in the past month of fighting. "You have a choice," Morrison continued. "You can withdraw your forces from this system and return to what remains of your empire, or you can continue fighting and be destroyed. But understand this, the age of Confederation dominance is over. The galaxy will never again submit to your rule." On Zeph Prime, the Confederation's capital world, High Admiral Zarthek was dealing with his own crisis. The human attack on the EA capital had shattered the government's credibility, and rebellion was spreading to worlds that had been loyal for centuries. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving independence declarations from 47 different sectors. The rebellion has spread beyond our ability to contain. What about our remaining fleets?" "Cut off and fighting for survival, sir. We've lost contact with over 60% of our naval forces. The humans have somehow coordinated simultaneous uprisings across the entire galaxy." Zarthek looked at the strategic display showing the collapse of the Confederation. Red warning. Lights marked rebellions, lost communications, and destroyed installations across thousands of star systems. The empire that had taken 3 centuries to build was falling apart in a matter of weeks. "Send a message to all remaining Confederation forces," he ordered. "Withdraw to the core systems. We're abandoning the outer territories." The message that went out across the galaxy marked the end of the Zephyrian Confederation as a galactic power. Species that had been enslaved for generations were suddenly free to determine their own destinies, but victory came at a terrible price for humanity. Earth bore the scars of orbital bombardment that had killed billions of people. Entire cities had been reduced to radioactive craters. The planet's surface was scarred by weapons that had turned forests into deserts and oceans into dead, poisoned seas. President Taylor addressed the survivors from his bunker beneath the ruins of Washington, D.C. The capital city had been one of the first targets of alien bombardment, and the surface was still too radioactive for human habitation. "My fellow humans," he began, speaking to a world population that had been reduced by half, "we have won our freedom, but the cost has been enormous. We have lost billions of our people, our cities lie in ruins, and our planet may take centuries to heal. But we have also accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. We have shown that freedom is worth any price, that dignity cannot be taken by force, and that even the smallest species can change the course of history if they refuse to surrender." Dr. Amy Foster was working in her underground laboratory, now converted into a coordination center for rebuilding efforts. The woman who had planned humanity's defense was now planning their recovery. "Mark," she said to her assistant, "we need to establish communication with all the new governments that are forming across the galaxy. They're going to need technical assistance, and we need to make sure this rebellion becomes a lasting freedom movement." "How do we coordinate with so many different species?" Dr. Mark Thompson asked. "We create something new, not an empire like the Confederation, but a voluntary alliance of free worlds. Each species maintains its independence, but we work together for mutual defense and support." The idea of the Free Worlds Alliance had been born during the darkest days of the siege, when human diplomats like Ambassador Rachel Torres had coordinated with resistance movements across the galaxy. Now it was becoming reality as liberated worlds sent representatives to establish formal diplomatic relations. Captain Steve Rodriguez, one of the few survivors of the original Ghost Squadron, was now helping to train pilots from newly liberated worlds. His quantum fighters had proven so effective that dozens of species were requesting the technology and training to build their own squadrons. "The key to our tactics," he explained to a mixed class of human and alien pilots, "is that we never fight fair. We use every advantage we can get, we hit hard, and we never give up. That's the human way of war." General Chris Parker was coordinating similar training programs on Titan, which had become a major military base and shipyard. The moon's industrial facilities were now producing ships not just for humanity, but for the entire alliance of free worlds. "We learned something important during this war," Parker told his staff. "Military technology is less important than the will to fight. The Confederation had better ships, better weapons, and more resources, but they had never faced an enemy that was willing to die rather than surrender." Colonel Ryan Mitchell, now promoted to general, was leading reconstruction efforts on Earth itself. His Special Forces teams had been retrained as engineers and emergency responders, working to rebuild the civilization that had been shattered by alien bombardment. "The surface cities are gone," he reported to President Taylor, "but we can rebuild them better than before. Underground cities connected by tunnels, hardened against orbital bombardment, designed to survive anything the galaxy can throw at us." But the most important work was being done by people like Commander Nina Hall, who was coordinating with former Confederation worlds to establish new governments. Many species had been enslaved for so long that they had forgotten how to govern themselves. "Freedom is more than just driving out the occupiers," Hall explained to a conference of newly liberated world leaders. "You have to build institutions that protect liberty, create economies that serve your people, and establish militaries that can defend your independence." The process was not always smooth. Some worlds descended into civil war as different factions fought for control. Others were attacked by Confederation loyalists who refused to accept the new reality. The Free Worlds Alliance found itself fighting dozens of small conflicts across the galaxy.